Welcome to CWS, Christian Writing and Speaking. I'm your host, Jackie Wilson, and today's guest is the director of a humanitarian organization, and she is the author of 2 books. Her first book, Cry Until You Laugh, is about her and her husband's battle with cancer after being diagnosed just 4 months apart. Her second book, and the book that we will talk about today, is called Love Is, and chronicles her year-long quest to figure out the true meaning of love. She says it's sometimes funny, sometimes scary, always enlightening, and it led to life-changing discoveries found mostly on the streets of Haiti. Let's welcome to the CWS stage, Miss Kim Sorelle. Welcome, Miss Kim.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here today, of course. And, I was torn about which story we were going to talk about today, but we settled on Love Is, because that's based on the First Corinthians, right? Chapter
Right.
13, the love chapter. But before we get into your book, let's talk about why this message. What's the story behind the message?
Well, as you mentioned, my first book, Cry Until You Laugh, my husband and I were diagnosed with cancer just 4 months apart. 4 months after I was diagnosed, he was. And he passed away just 6 weeks later. And so here I was in my 40s and this single woman, all of a sudden, not expecting that at all. I mean, we were going to be the old people growing in our 100 years old on rockers drinking lemonade on the front porch, or whatever. That was what we thought we'd be. And never did I think that at 47 years old I was going to be without him. And I had this whole new life, and it made me question love. I loved my husband deeply. We had a great relationship, and I know I had it better than most people have it their whole lives. And but here I am now without him. And I just question love, the reality of it. It's not like you go to a bookstore and there's a manual on love or love for dummies. We learn about love from our parents, from the people around us. And not everything we learn about love is really love. And not everything done in the name of love really is love. So what is love really? And so I decided I was going to figure it out. I was going to take a year, dedicate a full year to doing that, using, like you said, 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast. I think we all know it and we hear it at weddings, but our eyes kind of glaze over because we've heard it so many times. But what does it really mean? What is love that is patient? What is love that is kind? And in that chapter, there's actually 14 is's and isn't of love. And my goal was to do one a month. So math kind of happened. It took me a bit longer than a year, but it was a crazy journey because I thought I knew what love was. We know what love is. We love people. People love us. We love things. We throw around the word love pretty liberally, I think. I love black licorice, for instance. We use the word for whatever, but the most important thing in the world is that we love each other. Jesus told us, love God, love yourself, and love one another. That's the number one thing. But how do you love if you don't know what love really is? So discovering that was crazy. It was crazy. So different than I expected.
Yeah. And you said you learned most of the lessons on the streets of Haiti. Tell us about that.
Yes. Well, after my husband passed away, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I'm an entrepreneur. I've had businesses my whole life. And I didn't know if I was going to go back into business. I'd been in the nonprofit world, if I was going to go back there or what I was going to do. And I decided to take a job as a part-time bookkeeper for a nonprofit. And 12 days after I took the job, there was an earthquake in Haiti that killed 200,000 people. So within a couple of weeks, I was boots on the ground. I was in Haiti. And then for the next several years, I was in Haiti part of every month for the next several years. And so I was in Haiti and working on this. and trying to figure out love. And so I think it added sort of a different dimension to things because I was uncomfortable. It's one thing when you're working on something from the comfort of your own home in a city that with, food that and clean water coming out of the tap and taking as long a shower as you want, things like that. But Haiti's a little uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And so figuring it out there, I feel like it just went deeper. And I had some crazy experiences. I started each chapter with what I thought it would be. Like, love is patient, right? The very first month. And so I was just on my mind, love is patient, love is patient, love is patient, looking for it, trying to figure out what that was, thinking I already knew, because I know what patience is. You know what patience is, right? You're not honking your horn if you're stuck in traffic, or you're not mad because the person in front of you has 14 items and the 10 items are less lane, at the grocery store. And that's patience. But so I looked for it. And then when I found it, it blew my mind because it was so much different. Every single word, when you put love is or love is not in front of it, totally changes the meaning of the word. Mm. So like that very first one. And by the way, being in Haiti I love Haiti. I love Haiti. It's a beautiful country, the most amazing, beautiful, beautiful, wonderful people living in some of the most difficult circumstances in the world, unfortunately, but amazing people. And people is what it's all about anyway. But I was chased by a motorcycle gang. I had to sleep outside with tarantulas and snakes. I mean, I just had some crazy experiences. So I start with what I think it is and then tell the story of how God shows me what it is. And so it was an interesting experience, but so enlightening. Like the very first one, love is patient. You know what patience is, right, Jackie? Yeah. I mean, we all do. At least
I think I do.
I know, right? But what I discovered is that love that is patient is, first of all, I do believe you're supposed to love everybody, just like Jesus tells us to do. Just like it's in Leviticus, it tells us to love everybody. So it's throughout the Bible. We're supposed to love each other. So loving the person you're with, no matter who it is, your next door neighbor, your husband, your wife, your best friend, your person that just ran into you in the grocery store with their cart, or, kind of whoever it is, you love everybody. But loving the person that you're with enough to realize that this moment, this very particular moment right here, this is the most important moment of your life. What's in the past is in the past, and what's in the future is yet to come. This is the moment. And I don't know about you, but man, I thought I was the greatest multitasker. I could be thinking about what I had going later tonight. I could be thinking about where my kids had to be, what I had to pick up from the grocery store, what I did earlier in the morning, and be fully engaged in a conversation with whoever's standing right in front of me. And I discovered that I'm not that great at that. That in order to really show love that is patient, I need to give my full attention. That's what love that is patient does, is stops and truly listens, really listens, and gives your full attention, honors that person with your full attention, loves that person with your full attention. And this moment is going to come and go with or without you. Mm-hmm. So to be here and be engaged and realize people are way more important than agendas, that you can always take a minute. There's always a minute to spare. And even if it's a situation where you're going to be late, if you don't go right now, you got to go. But to say that then, to be able to say, oh gosh, I want to talk to you. Please, can I call you later? I can't right now, but let me call you later, instead of just brushing people off and hurrying on, because it's so easy to do. But the other thing that happens is when you fully engage, your ears open up and you really listen to what the other person is saying. And it's amazing how we have a lot more in common than we think we do. And that it's like these days people pick sides, right? And people pick sides, and then we're calling them a group, oh, well, because they're part of this group, this is how they believe. Because they go to that church, this is exactly how they believe. Because they're part of this political party, that's how they believe. Well, not everybody believes all the same things. And if they believe something, it's interesting to know why they do. Where does it come from that that's what they believe? So instead of making assumptions and having your rebuttal ready and just figuring this is exactly what they're going to say, but instead really listening, it's an education. It's amazing what you can learn. And what it does too is it lets people be who they are, because there's no judgment in love. So it lets people be who God has created them to be without judging. I would not like a world where everybody is exactly like me. We would drive each other crazy. It would not be a good world. It's good that we're different. It's good that we think differently. It's good we don't all believe exactly the same thing. There's good in a lot of different things. So to learn from each other, you have to be engaged to learn from each other. And that's what love that is patient does.
Yeah. And so you walk through all of 1 Corinthians 13 to tell this story about what love is. Can you share the most impactful story that you encounter on the streets of Haiti?
Sure. Gosh, there were so many. So it's hard to say the most impactful, but love is kind. The second one, the second month, kind, we know what kind is. You do kind things, you say kind things. But what is love that is kind? And it took me the entire month. I struggled with love that is kind and nearly gave up. And then I met Christopher. He was at this place I love to go, is the Home for Sick Children run by the Sisters of Charity. And I love to go there and go to the lower level where the babies are. And there's just a ton of cribs down there. And I like to just find a baby that I can just love on all day and help change diapers and feed and whatever. So I went there and I saw this beautiful baby boy laying in a crib, just looking so relaxed and so peaceful. And he was just sprawled out on his back, melting into the mattress. And he had an IV and he had two tiny little prongs in his tiny little nose, feeding him oxygen, and wasn't sure what was happening with him. And he was just so little. He was just so new. He was only 3 weeks old. And so as time went by, his story unraveled. And as I reached down to hold his hand, I saw that there was a woman standing at the end of the crib. And I found out that that was Christopher's grandmother, Natalie. So Christopher's mom was Natalie's only daughter, and she died shortly after giving birth on Natalie's dirt floor of her one-room home. And Natalie was alone then with Christopher, her only living relative. And at first, Christopher was not taking the bottle. And she thought, well, maybe it's because it wasn't his mother's milk. But then as time went by, things just got worse. He just couldn't hold anything down. And so she walked for miles to get him to the Sisters of Charity. So they're not a medical facility. They take care of children and they do a wonderful, incredible job, but they're not a hospital. They're not doctors. But they have a stethoscope. And the best guess was that Christopher had an abdominal obstruction. So something that probably in the US would be taken care of easily. But we were in Haiti, where there's few doctors and fewer hospitals and not the resources that we have here. So he probably needed surgery, or that was the guess that he needed surgery. Well, at one point in the day, Christopher stopped breathing, and so did we. And in a scurry, we noticed that there was a kink in his oxygen tube. And as soon as we straightened it out, we all breathed again. So it was obvious that Christopher needed oxygen, to get to the hospital to have surgery. So without oxygen, Christopher wouldn't make it to the hospital. So I thought, well, that's easy. We'll just get a portable oxygen tank. So I called everyone I could think of in Port-au-Prince. And I know a lot of people in Port-au-Prince, and most people had no idea where to go look for a portable oxygen tank. Some people did go to look, but nobody could find one. So poor Natalie had to make the choice, knowing that if Christopher stays there, he's going to die. If Christopher goes to the hospital with no oxygen, he could easily die because he won't be able to breathe. But she knew that surgery was really his only choice. So a doctor was put on notice, and the hospital wasn't far away. But in a city with 2 million people and an infrastructure for 40,000, it takes a long time to get anywhere in Port-au-Prince. Mm-hmm. So a car pulled up to the side of the building and kept the engine running. And then in this flurry, one of the sisters grabbed his IV. Another sister just scooped him up into her arms, pulled the oxygen away from his nose, and ran for the door. And they were gone. And then I turned around and Natalie was still standing there. And I said, Natalie, go, go. And then she pointed down at her feet and she had no shoes. And she knew she would not be allowed in the hospital without shoes. So I whipped off my sandals and I put them in one of her hands, grabbed her other hand and ran to the door. And she hopped in the van just as it was pulling away. So I gave Natalie my shoes. Anybody would do that. I'd give Natalie my shoes any day. I'd go barefoot for the rest of my life if it meant she could hold that precious baby boy. Mm. And so I showed kind love and then realized what it was. Love that is kind is no expectation love. I knew I'd never see my shoes again. I'd never see Natalie again. But I did something kind with zero expectation of receiving anything in return. Nothing, anything, not anything. And how often have you heard someone say, they didn't even say thank you? Or I brought them a casserole when they were sick. Where's my casserole? But as soon as you do something to get something, that's no longer love. Then you're just doing something to get something. That's not love that is kind. Love that is kind, period. Yeah. Zero expectations of receiving anything in return. And so with my shoes, that was love that is kind. But then I realized that, I showed kind love. But for Natalie to share that baby boy with me, for her to give me that day, for us to have that opportunity to bond, to be there together, to let me love on that baby boy, the knowing she'd never see me again, knowing that I'm not going to be doing anything for her, not expecting me to do a thing for her, that is love that is kind, well beyond a pair of sandals.
Yeah. And we often see that one kind act causes other people to do kind acts. So I'm sure your kind act is continuing to bless other people in ways we can never imagine. So this is why it's so important, because you showed the example of what it is to love and love kindly. Oh, just beautiful story. What is next for you, Kim?
Well, I am working on a couple different projects. I am speaking and love to speak to women's groups, anybody really, but there are small groups that are doing my book. And so then I'm zooming in, from time to time, as they go through my book together, if they have questions and that kind of thing. And so I'm open and doing things like that. I'm working some one-on-one with people to really help them love people that have been hurt by love. I mean, there's so much hurt in the name of love, or people being estranged from other people. You don't have to be, there's ways to do things and love people even when they're unlovable. And so I'm doing that, but I'm also working on a couple books. One, Love is for Churches, because some churches, we need love in churches. Church should be the example, right? We should be the example of love. Yeah. And Love is for Kids. And so I'm working on those projects and trying to start a love movement.
I love it. How can people connect with you and your books?
Well, the book, this book is called Love Is, so a pretty simple title. My last name is ridiculous. It has way too many letters, 2 R's, 2 E's, 2 L's, Sorrelle. So it's Sorrelle. My website is kimsorelle.com. So I've got information on my website. I'm on social media, but with a title like Love Is, it's a little bit easier to find. The book itself is a dark blue. It actually has a picture of Haiti in the background. That's you kind of can't see until you really look at it. But dark blue cover, Love Is, in big words. And so I'm pretty easy to find. I'm the only Kim Sorelle, literally the only Kim Sorelle spelled my way in the entire world. So hopefully I'm easy to find.
Thank you so much, Kim, for being a part of today's episode and graciously sharing your story. CWS audience. Okay, the challenge is issued. I don't know what your day has been like, but you go out there and love patiently, love kindly, with no expectations in return. And until next time, beautiful people, God bless.